Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Tutor to You session on design and research. We've got Laura and we've got Anne with us tonight. They're going to impart lots of wisdom in this tricky research methods area, which comes up now and again quite a bit. We can't never say that it won't, never say that it will, but regardless, it needs quite a lot of your skill, attention to detail, and you're going to get some top tips tonight from Laura and Anne. So let's go straight away then to what it is all about.
Okay, so I'm going to start off tonight. So remember your assessment objectives. The AO1 is your knowledge and understanding, AO2 is your application and use of knowledge, and AO3 is evaluation. And in these designer study questions that you might well get on paper 2, it does involve a mixture of those, because for example, sometimes you're asked to justify some of your decisions, and that clearly would be AO3. And you are applying and using your knowledge of research methods all through those answers. So things you need to know. Well, you should know by now that you can be asked research methods questions on every paper, on every topic. They can be everywhere. But usually the designer study questions appear on paper 2, because that is one that's got a whole section on research methods. The designer study questions are typically worth 12 marks. But there could be slightly shorter ones where you just asked to do one thing. But we're going to focus tonight on the 12 markers, because they are the most tricky ones for students to do. You will be given very clear instructions on what it is that you have to design and what things that you need to include, because there will be bullet points, and it really is all about the bullet points. And then you can use those bullet points as headings in your answer to support your organisation and clarity, and also to make sure that you've actually addressed all of the things that you've been asked to do, because that is really important. So we're going to start with this example question. So design an experiment using a repeated measures design that can be carried out in a classroom. The aim is to investigate whether listening to music affects task performance, e.g. while completing a word search or spot the difference puzzle. In your answer, you should provide details of, so here are your bullet points. These are the things that you must do. The operationalized IV, DV and controls, the sample and the sampling method, the procedure that could be used, and there should be enough detail for the study to be carried out. So that is what they are asking you to do. And it's just very important that you address all of those. So if you were reading through the question, what would be important things that would leap out of that you'd be wanting to underline or highlight? If we just look at the first bit before we get to the bullet points, what are important things to pick out there? It's 6 till 7, the live stream, Gabby, approximately. Yeah, answers in the chat. Sorry, I should have said that, shouldn't I? Yeah, so just quickly in the chat, what are things in that first, 3 lines that you would pick up on? Yep, that it needs to be a repeated measures design. Very, very important. Underline it. That the aim is to look at how listening to music affects task performance. Yep. Anything else that's important? Yeah, that it can be carried out in a classroom, because if you start, designing things that can't be carried out in a classroom, then you're not doing what you're being asked to do. Oh, sorry, is it 30 minutes, Laura? Okay, then how about in the bullet points? What are the important things there that you need to be focusing on? I suppose it's a bit straightforward, really. But sometimes people kind of miss little bits. But what little bits that people might miss there through not reading? Operationalize, yes, great. I think we often miss what that word, that IV and that DV need to be operationalized. You need to say exactly how the IV is going to be manipulated and exactly how the DV is going to be measured. Okay, so well done for spotting that. So yeah, if we just bring our Yep, and that you need to write a procedure and enough detail, but I already stressed that, didn't I? Okay, so if we look at the mark scheme for these questions, and if we look at the top, for the band 4, suggestions are generally well detailed and practical, showing sound understanding of designing the experiment. All 3 elements are present. When it says all 3 elements are present, that means that all 3 bullet points have been addressed. Justifications are appropriate as for why you've designed it the way it is. The answer is clear and coherent. Specialist terminology is used effectively. Minor detail and or explanation sometimes lacking. We're not kind of expecting for perfection for 12 marks because you're probably only talking about 15 minutes worth of writing. But you do need to have addressed all 3 elements. And also it needs to be, the experiment that you have designed needs to be, there needs to be enough detail there that somebody could actually do that experiment. If you look at level 3, 7 to 9, then you've got suggestions mostly sensible and practical, some understanding, at least 2 elements are present. So if you don't address all 3 elements, then you can't get above 9. For band 2, at least 1 element is addressed. But you still could address 2 and still end up in band 2, because obviously the other things are important as well. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Lara now.
Thanks, Anne. So we're going to go through, if you like, a list that we've compiled of kind of common mistakes students make on these design a study answers. So firstly, a lot of students rote learn research methods information, and they do that without adapting it to the question. They also maybe might not show enough information for particular bullet points or the ability to actually design the research. And I always say to my students, try and put yourself in the experimenter's position. If you were going to read this research report, would you be able to replicate it as exactly you're kind of playing it in your mind? Okay, have you missed any detail out? It's the ability to really design the research so it's repeatable as well. Lack of justifications, and that's really important that you do justify your choices when required. Again, not including enough detail or elaboration, and that kind of ties in with the justification as well, and also your knowledge of research methods to be demonstrated. Sometimes the clarity and coherence in the answer, and sometimes helping to have a formula of how to structure these 12 markers is really handy. And Anne mentioned that before, that really try and use those bullet points that they give you as your subheadings. That really kind of breaks your answer up, and it's not meant to be an essay, it's meant to look like a report, how we would write a report up with those subheadings. We've got lack of specialist terminology, also is quite common, and again this often comes up in those levels in the mark schemes that Anne's just showed you. So specialist terminology is always quoted there in those levels. And lastly, this is probably quite a common error in the exam, and maybe if you weren't familiar with the mark scheme here, you wouldn't understand maybe how this could be so detrimental. But by not addressing each of the bullet points, okay, that means you might kind of only hit level 3 if all of the other bullet points have been kind of answered well. So it's really important that you have a go at answering and addressing all of the bullet points that are given in the paper, and that way you kind of open that door potentially, if your answer is really good, to level 4. Okay, we're going to look at the question that Anne showed you earlier. So again, experiment using repeated measures, remember, which is carried out in a classroom. And the aim here is to investigate whether listening to music affects performance. And we've got some examples there of performance measurement. So the first bullet point, let's have a reminder. It said the operationalise IV DV controls. Now, we're going to do this a slightly different way tonight. We're going to actually play some multiple choice questions, because I really want to hear from you. Okay, how would we break this answer down? What do we really, really need to include here? Well, we need knowledge of operationalisation. What is the IV here and what's the DV here? And also suggestions of controls. So let's see if we can demonstrate this knowledge through some of these multiple choice. So again, answers in the chat box when you're ready. What is meant by operationalising variables? So do we think the answer is A, B, or C? So when you're ready, answers in the chat box. Okay, so we've got some answers coming in. Brooke, well done. I think you were first there to get in. So we've got some B's there in the chat box. So you are correct, and some more B's there. So yeah, it is about being explicit in how the IV is going to be manipulated, how the DV will be measured, so that that research, again, can be replicated by other researchers. Really, really important. All right, let's look at question 2. What variables must be controlled? A, B, or C? What ones must be controlled? So identified and controlled. Okay, so a few of us are saying C. We've got any other answers coming through? Anybody else? Okay, so mostly C's I think we've got there. So yeah, you're quite right. Extraneous variables, and students often get B and C muddled. Remember, an extraneous variable is something we can identify and control for, and we should control for. Confounding tends to be an extraneous variable that hasn't been controlled for, or something that cannot be controlled, like the weather, that does confound, hence the word. It confounds the DV. So well done on that one. So the next one then, which of these is the best definition of independent variable? A, B, or C? Okay, can see some B's coming through, really good. Yeah, so again, it's an easy mistake to make, but also a very easy one if you can find a method to remember the difference between IV and DV. So yeah, IV is the one, you're quite correct, that is manipulated by the researcher. So yeah, really well done. And next one, you could probably guess, we've got which of these is the best definition of a DV, so dependent variable, A, B, or C? Okay, I think we've got Adna there in first with an A. And some more A's following there. Excellent. Yep. So the answer is the variable that is measured by the researcher to see if it is affected by the IV. That's why we manipulate the IV. So well done. Excellent. Okay, next one. If a researcher were investigating the effects of age on memory using a lab experiment, which of these may need controlling? So which of these may need controlling? A, B, or C? Any more answers? So the correct answer, I think quite a few of you put A down, is noise distractions in the room should be controlled for, particularly in a lab experiment, and can be. Okay, number 6 then. What is a control group? A, B, or C? Okay, Chloe, you're very quick tonight. So we've got A from Chloe. Anybody else want to add any answers? Yeah, so a group that do not experience the experimental treatment. And I don't think I'll give away the next one, because the next one is the question I want to ask you all is, why is using a control group good for research? Why would we use control group? Why is this good for research? So we coming up with some B's there. Yeah, well done, official. Yeah, so we've got it provides a benchmark for behaviour, which the experimental group is therefore compared to, because that's the benchmark. Excellent, really, really good. So, just by that, you can see that you understand this question, the operationalise IV DV controls. If we go back to the question here, so we've got a suggested answer here. So participants will complete both parts of the task wearing noise cancelling headphones to ensure they're in complete silence for the silent condition, and to ensure that wearing headphones is not a confounding variable. So it's really important. We've got the controls there, and obviously they've operationalised both variables by saying the IV is music, so whether they listen to it, classical music with no lyrics, or silent condition when completing a word search. They've been very, very specific there. That's really, really important and imperative to ensure that you get that full credit for operationalizing your variables. And then we have the DV, the time taken. Again, we've put in seconds, that's how it's measured, to find specifically 5 words in a word search puzzle. And again, you might want to add more detail here, okay, particularly with the controls. What other controls could you make sure that were in place here for this study? Okay, I'm going to pass you over to Anne now.
Okay, so again, breaking it down. So we're going to look at the second bullet point now. So in your answer, you should provide details of the sample and the sampling method. So again, to kind of get your heads back into this, we're going to do some 10-second countdowns. We don't have the noise, but we do have the countdown. The countdown's still going on. So you've got 10 seconds for each one in the chat then. So what information about a sample would somebody need if they were going to replicate your study? So this is about the actual sample, not the sampling method, just focus on the sample. What would they need to do if they were going to replicate your study, if they were going to repeat it? What would they need to know? Hoping to get some answers. Yep. Age, gender of the sample. Well done, Gabby. Anything else from anybody else? No, we're focusing on the sample itself, official. Standardized procedures is kind of part of the procedure, or the control. Okay, so you need to know how many as well. You know, how many in total. What was the age range? How many males? How many females? Who were the target population as well? Where did they come from? And obviously what sampling method you use. So we're going to think about sampling method now on the next question. So you know about various sampling methods, but which sampling method is representative, but it's also complex to do? This is have a think about this one. It's a sampling method that's likely to give you a representative sample, or maybe more likely than some of them, but it's also quite complex. Well done, stratified, really great answers. And yeah, Dom's Garden, I like the location on the other one, yeah, where the sample was drawn from, which is part of the target population, isn't it? Okay, so yes, stratified, because you have to have a lot of knowledge about your target population, don't you? In terms of, you know, the proportions of males, females, ages, anything else that might apply to your study, and then you select from your sample accordingly. So it is a tricky one to actually do. Okay, so if we look at the next question, so how could random sampling be used to gather participants? It's different. How can you do a random sample? Yep, you can use a random number generator. I mean, if you're describing how to do it, then you need to remember to say that you need to give everybody a number in your sampler number, and then put them into the random number generator and get it to pick out however many in your sample. Or you could put all the names in a hat and draw out from the hat there. Yeah, so well done. So again, this is information that you could kind of use in your answer. So if we have a look at our method then, the sample and the sampling method. So we decided that a sample of 26 form students will be selected using a volunteer method. So we've gone for volunteer sampling. So again, you've got to think about, explain exactly how you would do that. So a notice will be placed on the student notice board in a sixth form college, asking for volunteers to take part in a psychology experiment to investigate factors that influence concentration. And then you can't leave it there. You need to say, well, how are you going to get them to come along? So the first 20 participants to respond to the email address provided will become the sample, and they'd be asked to come. to the classroom where you're going to do the study. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Lara again.
Thanks, Anne. Okay, so looking at the next bullet point in our question, we've got the procedure that could be used. There should be enough detail for the study to be carried out. So I want to hear from you guys, what sort of things could we include or need to be evident in the procedure here with regards to this particular study? What sort of things should we make sure we consider for the procedure to include? What goes in a procedure? Any ideas? There's many things can go into procedure, just one thing. So often in the procedure, there is a area of research methods that is often quoted in the mark scheme that needs to be included in the procedure. So I'm not sure if anyone's picking up what that might be. Yes, yeah, the task that is given, definitely, well done. Yeah, definitely we would do that. We'd also need to do things like consider ethics. So ethical considerations for the study is a big one that often comes up in the procedure. So with regards to this study, you need to be thinking about, as you said, is the task that participants are going to do, also how long the participants have to complete the task, how long they're actually required for, what materials are needed throughout the study, whether participants complete the task alone or together, what music is used in the study, and how participants are actually going to listen to that. Are they going to listen to the music on a speaker in the classroom? Are they going to have headphones on? What sort of headphones are they? Are they ear ones? Are they go over the ear? So all these things perhaps are going to be considered and placed into the procedure. So yeah, well done, Doms. I can see you put debrief, ethical considerations. Absolutely need to do that in the procedure. Yeah, it's really important. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at this different question now. So design an experiment using an independent group's design to investigate whether exercise could increase feelings of happiness. For your measure of happiness, you should devise a measure that would provide data suitable for testing at an ordinal level of measurement. Now, the part of the question here that we're really going to look at is the data analysis section, okay? Because this sometimes is a bullet point in 12 markers, and here you've got to include reference to both descriptive and inferential analysis. Now, can anybody tell me what's meant by descriptive? Descriptive statistics, descriptive analysis. What sort of things are we pointing to there in research methods, do we think, for descriptive stats? Any ideas? Okay, so we've got a couple of kind of descriptive statistics that I'm sure you guys are going to recognise, and maybe some of you are going to put it in. Yes, I mean, we're wanting to put the data in a meaningful way, but what is that? There are some calculations often we might be doing. So, for example, the mean, mode, and median, range, standard deviation, these sorts of things. So we could also potentially in data analysis be asked to draw a graph as well, just to make you aware. So you need to know the graphs and when we might utilise each graph as well. Yeah, well done. I can see the mean, median, mode coming up there. Well done. So like I said, we're going to focus on that part of the question, the last bullet point, the data analysis that could be used. So let's have a look at some questions and break down and see that understanding of those measures of central tendency, which are the mean, mode, and median. So here we've got the researcher could split those participants into two groups, have one complete 30 minutes of exercise and one complete no exercise. They could then complete a survey that would produce a happiness score. The research could work out a mean happiness score for each group. Now here you're asked to justify why the mean may be preferred to the mode or median. So you've really got to know the kind of merits and weaknesses of those different measures of central tendency. So, for example, when might you use the mean? Why would that be good? So who can give us a justification why the mean might be more preferred than the mode or median? Any ideas? So think about how to calculate the mean and what it does. That'll give you a bit of a clue, hopefully. Yeah, good. Mode, there might be two numbers, but why would the mean be better then? What are you saying? Yeah, well done. All of the data of the participants are involved in the mean in comparison to the mode or median. Yeah, excellent. More representative, we'd say, yeah, here we go. Okay, so we've got the mean uses all data in the data set. Well done, those of you that recognise that. Whilst the mode and median use only one or two pieces of data. So therefore the mean could be regarded as the most representative of the sample. Now, what students tend to do with an answer like this is they'll kind of do the first sentence, but they won't go on to say, well, you know, because the question's asking you to justify why the mean's more preferred than mode median. You would need to obviously say the mean, therefore, is regarded as the most representative of the sample in comparison to the other two. So it's really important to make sure you really break that question down and understand what that means to justify. Okay, let's have a look at another question now. So again, here I'd like you to justify why this would gather ordinal level data. So why is that gathering ordinal level data? So again, jump to the DV there in the stem, how it's measured. Why would that be ordinal level data? So firstly, we need a reminder, okay, what is ordinal data? So in hierarchy, if you like, with, if you like, the most standardized, if you like, level of measurement, we have interval, then we have ordinal, and then we have nominal. Yeah, well done. So happiness score is subjective, so it's not standardized or have the same interval. Yes, we're getting somewhere. So definitely it is ordinal in terms of happiness scores because it's not a standardized test, as we've said, and they are not on a recognized scale of equal intervals. Okay, so just a comparison there that I always give, you know, interval level data might be temperature because it has equal intervals. You know, the difference between 2 and 3 Celsius, it's going to be the same difference between 4 and 5 Celsius. So again, it's got those equal intervals. Happiness score, you know, a 3 and a 4 based on a 10 and an 11 might not have the same equal interval, for example, because it's subjective rating again. All right, well done, guys. Really good answers. I'm going to pass you over to Anne now for the inferential test section.
Okay, so the hardest one. So you might be asked to choose a suitable inferential test that could be used to analyse the data. So I'm aware that maybe some of you might not have done choosing the correct test yet. So if you haven't, don't worry about it. You will be learning about it at some point. But who can have a go at that? Who can think what would be a suitable test that you could use to analyse the data from this study? We'll just have a go and then I'll take you through it. So if you remember, you've got to kind of go through those questions. You know, is the data ordinal? Is it interval? Is it nominal? Are you looking for a difference or a relationship? And what is the design? Is it a related or unrelated design? And then that takes you to the correct test. But as I say, I'm aware that not quite. Remember this, it's not a Wilcoxon because we've got two groups here. We've not got repeated measures. So you're nearly there. Yep, it's a Mann-Whitney, yes, yes. Okay, but I say I'm aware for some of you won't have probably have done this yet. So it's a Mann-Whitney U test because, and this is the justification, and this is really important for those marks who've been asked to justify it, because it's a test of difference. You're looking at the difference in happiness, aren't you, between those who do and do not complete exercise. The data is ordinal because it's not a standardized measure of happiness. We've already decided that. and an independent group's design is used because the participants are only taking part in either the exercise or the no exercise condition. Had it been repeated measures like the first one we talked about, then it would have been the Wilcoxon. It's not a t-test because you can't use the unrelated t-test because the data is ordinal. It needs to be interval to use the t-test. Okay, so there we go. So well done.
Great session and really good demonstration of how it is really synoptic, isn't it? That type of question. So, I mean, things that you've just gone through there, you've got your sampling, your target populations, your data, your variables. Really, you really need to know research methods to answer these. There are things that you can do, like they've said tonight, make sure you've got everything in there. But like Laura and Anne both said, even if you've got all 4 or 3 elements present, if the skills aren't there as well, then that doesn't mean you're going to hit the top band. Now, some important notes: we are not back next week, so I'm going to tell you when we're back. We're back Tuesday, the 2nd of December, where we'll be focusing on hypotheses. That's going to be an amazing session. It's definitely an area that catches people out every year. Laura, you'll be joining us, and so will Sarah. And then we're going to be away with Strong Foundations, aren't we? That's why we're not here for the next couple of weeks. We're on tour. If you want to come and spend the day with us revising all your year 12 material, so things that you've done, things that you might need support with or refresh, then you can come along with your teachers or without your teachers. I'll put the link in the chat and you can have a look on the website as well. But thank you very much to Anne and to Laura. Excellent session. You can watch this back. Head over to Instagram as well, at Tutor2U if you've got any other questions. But for now, thank you very much. Thanks for all your answers. You've been great. And we will see you on the 2nd of December. If not, on Strong Foundations. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.